I had an affair with my best friend's wife. Looking back, it's crazy how life can fall apart when you least expect it. I lived in a peaceful part of London, where everything seemed perfect. My wife, Sarah, and I had a picture-perfect life that people would put on Christmas cards. Our neighbors, Harry and Emily, were more like family than friends. We had been close for over 10 years. Our families did almost everything together, watching fireworks on New Year's, going on double dates, and even taking seaside vacations. We spent countless nights drinking wine and talking about life, work, and childhood memories. But the strange thing was, Emily and I had a special connection. We just clicked. We'd have deep conversations about life, our struggles, and dreams. I could confide in her more than most people. During family dinners, sometimes we'd sneak out to the garden to talk while everyone else was busy with board games. There was this unspoken bond between us, like we were both carrying things we never fully talked about. Then one night, everything changed. Harry was away on a business trip, some convention in Bristol, and Emily called me out of the blue. Her voice sounded tense, almost like she was scared. She asked me to meet her at a local pub, the Rusty Nail. It wasn't a fancy place, just a few tables, dim lights, and an old pool table, but it was quiet enough to talk. When I got there, Emily was sitting in a corner, nervously tapping her fingers on her glass. The moment I sat down, I knew something was wrong. She looked fragile, which wasn't like her at all. Usually, Emily had this aura of confidence, like she could take on anything, but not that night. She got straight to the point and told me she thought Harry was having an affair. She said he'd been coming home late, always with some excuse about work. But she wasn't stupid, she could smell another woman on him, unfamiliar perfume, the kind that clings to you when you've been a little too close to someone. And he started guarding his phone like it was some state secret. I didn't know what to say at first. Harry really was the guy I trusted for years, the kind of friend who'd give you the shirt off his back without you even asking. The thought of him cheating on Emily just didn't make sense in my head. But Emily, she was desperate for answers, and honestly, I couldn't just leave her hanging. I told her I'd help her figure it out, get to the bottom of whatever was going on. I guess a part of me wanted to prove her wrong. I didn't want to believe it was true. So that's how it all started. We became this team of amateur detectives. We tracked Harry's schedule, tried to piece together where he was going when he was out working. Emily even got sneaky with his phone, but the bastard must have been careful because we found nothing solid at first. Meanwhile, I started paying more attention to Sarah, thinking maybe she'd have some idea what was up with Harry. And that's when I noticed a few things that didn't sit right. Sarah had been emotionally distant for months, cold, like she was going through the motions. Then there were those work evenings where she'd come back late, smelling of wine and refusing to talk about her day. I'd brush it off back then, thinking she was stressed or something, but now, I wasn't so sure. Over the next few weeks, Emily and I spent a lot of time together, digging for the truth. We'd meet at my place when Sarah was out, or we'd sit in her garden whispering late into the night, like a pair of conspirators. What started as me trying to help Emily quickly turned into something more. There was this silent closeness between us, a comfort in knowing we were both going through the same problems. It felt good to have someone who understood that feeling of doubt that eats away at your peace of mind. Our nights together got longer, and our talks became deeper. We talked about everything, our marriages, regrets, dreams, and even our fears. And every time she looked at me with those worried, sad eyes, I felt the need to protect her, to make it all go away. It was getting harder to deny the fact that there was something between us, something way beyond friendship. But I told myself it was all in my head, that it was just the stress of everything screwing with my emotions. We were both so wrapped up in our little investigation that we didn't see the trap we were walking into, because while we were trying to uncover one affair, we had no idea that the real betrayal was happening much closer to home. And it would only be a matter of time before the truth came crashing down on us. Weeks, that's how long Emily and I spent going down this rabbit hole, trying to uncover Harry's so-called affair. And I'm not going to lie, it was starting to feel like a wild goose chase. I started to wonder if maybe we were just paranoid, imagining things that weren't really there. All those late nights, the whispers, the sneaking around, it was getting exhausting. There were moments I thought about calling it quits, telling Emily to let it go. But every time I saw that look on her face, that look of desperation, I knew I couldn't walk away. She needed me, and I guess part of me needed her too. Then everything changed with one goddamn email from some anonymous sender, like some sick twist out of a soap opera. I remember it like it was yesterday. Emily called me up, her voice shaking, saying she needed to see me right away. I thought maybe she'd found another clue. Usually, we'd spend hours overthinking some small detail, but not this time. When I got to her place, Emily was sitting at the dining table with her laptop open, just staring at the screen like it scared her. She didn't say anything, just motioned for me to sit down and take a look. That email contained photos from some fancy restaurant, all romantic with dim lighting. Harry, my so-called best friend, looking smug and comfortable, holding hands with some woman across the table. At first, I tried to deny it, to make it blurry in my mind, but the more I looked, the clearer it became. That woman was Sarah, my wife, the love of my life, the mother of my kids. And she wasn't just sitting there with Harry, she was holding his hand like it was the most natural thing, smiling at him with the same grin I used to think was only for me. It felt like someone punched me in the gut, and I couldn't breathe. I just stared at the screen, the reality of it not sinking in at first. I thought it had to be some mistake, some mix-up, but there they were, in high-definition clarity, my wife, my best friend, wrapped up in each other like they were the only two people in the room. Emily was trying to hold back tears, but her hands were shaking so much she couldn't even close the laptop. I don't know what to say, she finally choked out, barely a whisper. I didn't have any words for her either, I just sat there, numb, trying to piece together how the hell this could have happened. It was like my whole world had been ripped out from under me, like the floor had fallen away, and I was just free-falling into some dark abyss. How could I have been so blind? The signs, the clues, how did I miss all of it? For a while, we just sat in silence. I don't know how long, it could have been minutes, could have been hours, but eventually, Emily came over and put her arms around me, and that's when I broke. I mean, I'm not a guy who cries easily, I hadn't cried in years, but that day I couldn't hold it in anymore. Emily, bless her, held me, even though she was hurting too. She comforted me like she knew exactly what I was feeling, because she was going through the same thing. Why? I finally asked, my voice shaking. Why would they do this to us? Emily shook her head, her eyes full of tears. I don't know, John. I wish I did, and that was the hardest part. There were no answers, just more questions, and the pit in my stomach only grew with each one. How long had I been doing this? How many times had I been lied to, had my trust betrayed, and right under my nose too? God, the thought of sneaking around, sharing some secret life with Harry, it made me want to hurl. Every late night at work, every girl's weekend, every little lie she'd fed me was flashing through my head like a damn highlight reel, and I couldn't believe how stupid I'd been to miss all of it. Emily and I spent hours that night talking, or maybe it was more like venting. Everything just came spilling out, the pain, the anger, the betrayal. It was like we were bleeding from the same wound, and we both knew there wasn't a bandage big enough to stop the flow. I learned things about Sarah that I wish I hadn't, little red flags that Emily had noticed over the years but never thought much about. And I shared my own suspicions about Harry, how he'd always been overly friendly with Sarah, how he cracked those innocent jokes that never seemed quite so innocent in hindsight. Then came the emotions, like a storm. At first, it was pure despair, a sickening feeling like I had lost everything that mattered to me. But that didn't last long. Soon, the despair turned into anger, blinding, burning anger. Not just at Harry, not just at Sarah, but at myself. How did I let this happen? I was supposed to be the one keeping my family together, the one protecting my marriage. But I failed, and now everything was ruined. Emily was just as angry, maybe even more so. She talked about how Harry had been her rock, how she trusted him with every part of her soul. And now, he was nothing but a lying, cheating bastard. As we sat there, feeding off each other's fury, one thing became clear: this wasn't going to end with just broken hearts. We wanted revenge, and not just a petty kind either. "Let's make them pay," Emily said, her eyes blazing with a mix of hurt and determination. "Let's make them regret every single moment they ever spent together." I didn't need to be convinced at that point. I would have done anything to make Sarah and Harry feel even a fraction of the pain we were going through. So that's where we were, two people betrayed by the people we loved most, now united by a thirst for revenge. I didn't know what was going to happen next, but I knew one thing: Sarah and Harry had messed with the wrong people, and it was time they found out just how much damage a couple of scorned spouses could do. You know, for a long time, I thought catching Sarah and Harry in the act would give me some sort of closure. We thought that once we knew everything and had solid proof, it would all make sense. But the more we looked into it, the more it felt like quicksand, pulling me in deeper, leaving me helpless and angry. Emily and I agreed not to do anything reckless, no losing our temper or having big confrontations. We were hurt, but we knew that rushing in without thinking wouldn't help. We needed a plan, so that's what we did. For weeks, we played detective, trying to see how far this mess went. Emily kept a closer eye on Harry's schedule, checked his phone when she could, and tracked his excuses and lies. As for me, I started paying attention to every little thing Sarah did. I wish I could say I was surprised by what I found, but honestly, once you know the truth, the signs are everywhere. She was like a stranger in our house. Those work evenings that would suddenly pop up on her schedule out of nowhere? Yeah, they lined up suspiciously well with Harry's so-called client meetings. The mood swings, the way she snapped at me over the smallest things, it felt like she was pushing me away on purpose, creating distance so she could be free to do whatever the hell she wanted. And then there were the nights she'd come home with that "I'm too tired to talk" look, and the nights I could smell cheap wine on her breath, which she tried to cover up with some mints, like I was too stupid to notice. I should have known. I should have put the pieces together sooner. But love makes you blind to the things you don't want to see. Emily and I were getting closer, much closer than before. We were spending all this time together, having late-night talks. It felt like we were two soldiers in the same battle, fighting the same war. We met almost every night, sometimes at her place, sometimes at mine, discussing plans and trying to piece together how our lives had fallen apart. We knew we had to catch them in the act, because words alone wouldn't be enough. We needed clear, undeniable proof to confront them. That was the only way we could take back control. Eventually, we decided to take things further. We needed to see the affair for ourselves. It was risky, and I wasn't sure how it would make me feel, but staying in the dark felt worse. So, we got a small hidden camera and placed it in both Harry and Emily's place in mine. The adrenaline from sneaking around like that was unlike anything I'd ever felt, like being in a spy movie. But this was real, and the stakes were our lives and marriages. One night, Emily came over to my place. Sarah had said she'd be working late, big surprise there, so we knew we'd have a few hours to go over whatever footage we'd managed to collect. We sat on the couch, huddled over my laptop, like a couple of teenagers up past their bedtime. For a while, it was all quiet, just two people staring at a screen, scrolling through hours of nothing, praying for that one moment that would finally expose the truth. But as the hours dragged on and the reality of what we were doing set in, the silence started to feel heavy. You ever have one of those moments where you just know something's going to happen? That was it. The air between us felt charged, like every emotion we'd been burying was ready to explode all at once. And suddenly, we weren't just two people on a mission anymore. We were two broken souls, desperate to feel whole again. Emily looked at me, and there was this look in her eyes like she was searching for something: comfort, reassurance, hell, maybe just a way to forget, even if it was only for a little while. And I felt it too, that aching need to be seen, to be wanted, to feel like I wasn't just some discarded piece of trash tossed aside by the woman I loved. "It's all so up," isn't it?" she whispered, her voice barely holding back the tears. I nodded, trying to swallow the lump in my throat. "Yeah, it really is." We sat there for a while, so close but feeling like we were in our own world. I'm not sure who moved first, maybe it was her, maybe it was me, but suddenly the space between us was gone. She was in my arms, and I was kissing her like it was the only thing that mattered. I know what you're thinking, how could I do that? How could I betray my own marriage like that, even after everything Sarah did? But in that moment, none of that mattered. In that moment, all that existed was the two of us, clinging to each other like we were drowning, and the only way to stay afloat was to hold on tighter. We didn't make it to the bedroom, we didn't even make it off the couch. And it wasn't gentle or sweet, it was raw, it was desperate, it was everything we needed it to be, right then and there. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't partly about revenge, about reclaiming some sense of power in a situation where we felt completely powerless. But it was also about feeling wanted again, about finding comfort in someone who understood every ounce of pain you were going through. Afterward, we just lay there, tangled up in each other, the glow of the laptop screen still casting shadows across the room. There was no awkwardness, no regret, just this weird sense of calm, like we'd found something we didn't even know we were looking for. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt okay, maybe even hopeful in a strange way. The next morning, when the sun came up and the reality of what we'd done started to sink in, we didn't talk about it, didn't make any promises, didn't try to define what it meant. We knew it wouldn't change anything, not really. We were still two people whose lives had been torn apart by the people we loved most, but now, at least, we had each other. Even though I knew it couldn't last and that once we confronted Sarah and Harry, everything would change, I still hoped that maybe, just maybe Emily and I could get through this mess together. Sometimes, you have to walk through the darkness to find the light. You'd think, after everything finding out about Sarah and Harry, and that night with Emily, I just wanted to forget it all and move on. But when your whole world falls apart like that, it's not that simple. We didn't just want closure, we wanted revenge, pure, raw revenge. And honestly, we didn't care who got hurt along the way. So we sat down and put together a plan, and I'm not talking about some half-baked, spur-of-the-moment act of anger. This was calculated, methodical. We wanted them to pay, and we were willing to go as far as necessary to make that happen. We were like two generals plotting a war, and in our minds, the only way to win was to blow up the entire battlefield. The first thing we did was upgrade our spy game. The single camera we'd hidden before was fine for catching little snippets of their dirty behavior, but we needed the full picture. We needed footage that would make it impossible for Harry and Sarah to squirm their way out of what they'd done. So we set up multiple cameras, one in our bedroom, one in the living room, and one in Harry and Emily's apartment. It wasn't easy, and it took several failed attempts before we got it right. I can't even tell you the number of times we'd almost gotten caught sneaking in and out of our own homes like burglars. It was risky, it was insane, and it had my heart pounding every time, but it was necessary. And then came the waiting. Days turned into weeks as we waited for the cameras to catch anything that would give us what we needed. In the meantime, Emily and I kept our distance. Whatever that night had been, whatever comfort we found in each other, we knew we had to stay focused. This wasn't about us, this was about them, and it was about getting our revenge. I still remember the night we got our first solid footage. I was sitting in my living room, blankly staring at the TV when Emily called. "John, you need to come over now," she said. Her voice was breathless and almost frantic, and I knew something big had happened. I rushed to her place, my mind racing with thoughts. When I walked in, she didn't say a word, she just handed me her laptop and pressed play. There they were, Harry and Sarah, wrapped up together on my own couch. Seeing it made me feel sick, but I couldn't look away. Sarah was wearing that dress, the one I'd bought her for our anniversary, the one she claimed she didn't like and shoved at the back of her closet. And here she was, wearing it for another man, on my couch, in my house. I clenched my fist so hard my knuckles turned white. But Emily, she just sat there, quiet and calm. I think by then, the anger had burned through her tears, leaving only cold determination behind. "We've got them," she said simply, her voice steady in a way that made me admire her strength. "We got everything we need." It was true, the footage was clear as day, and it wasn't just that one time. Over the next few days, we caught them again and again, sometimes at my place, sometimes at Harry and Emily's apartment, always wrapped up in their little bubble of lies and lust. Watching it felt like someone was slowly driving a knife into my back, but it was also satisfying in a sick way. Every second of footage was another nail in their coffins, another piece of evidence we could use to destroy them, and that's exactly what we planned to do. The idea to upload the footage online came to Emily first. "We need to make sure everyone sees it," she said one night, her eyes sharp with vengeance. Not just them, but everyone around them, their friends, their family, their coworkers. They deserved to be humiliated the way they humiliated us. I was hesitant at first. Airing our dirty laundry for the whole world to see felt extreme. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Why should we protect them? Why should we keep their dirty secret when they had worked so hard to hurt us? They made their choices, and now it was time for them to face the consequences. So we spent the next week getting everything ready. We gathered the footage, edited it down to the most shocking and important moments, and created a package that would be impossible to ignore. Let me tell you, it was brutal. Every touch, every kiss, and every whispered word was laid out for everyone to see. And I wanted them to feel the full weight of what they had done. I set up fake social media accounts and created a temporary email address. It felt like we were getting ready for some kind of digital battle. Once everything was ready, we went for it. We posted the videos online and tagged everyone in their social circles, friends, family, coworkers. Anyone connected to Harry or Sarah was getting a front row seat to what was happening. Then we waited. The fallout was immediate. It was like lighting a match in a room full of gasoline. Within hours, the videos had been shared and reshared, spreading like wildfire across every social media platform you could think of. People I hadn't spoken to in years were messaging me, shocked and horrified at what they'd seen. Sarah's phone must have been blowing up, but I didn't give a damn. I blocked her number and cut off every line of communication between us. As far as I was concerned, she didn't exist anymore. Harry, on the other hand, tried to play damage control. He tried calling Emily, tried reasoning with her, but she wasn't having any of it. She was a force of nature, unmovable, unshakable. And as much as I hated what we'd become, as much as I knew we crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, I felt vindicated. They had ruined our lives, and now it was their turn to suffer. I wish I could say that revenge brought me peace, that seeing their lives crumble gave me the closure I needed. But the truth is, it didn't. It was messy, chaotic, and ugly. Part of me knew that we'd only made things worse for ourselves. But in the heat of the moment, fueled by anger, hurt, and betrayal, none of that mattered. All that mattered was making them pay. And pay they did. When the videos went live, I expected chaos, but nothing could have prepared me for the firestorm that followed. It was like setting off a nuclear bomb, and the fallout was swift and brutal. Within hours, the videos spread like wildfire, reaching every part of Harry and Sarah's lives. Friends, family, coworkers, and even casual acquaintances all faced the shocking truth of what they had done. Their secret was out, and there was no way to hide from it anymore. And you know what? I wanted them to feel it. I wanted them to experience what it was like to have their world turned upside down and to be exposed in front of everyone who mattered. Sarah's family, the same people who had been at our wedding and part of every major moment in our lives, called me confused and ashamed. They couldn't believe what they were seeing, and frankly, I didn't care. I let their calls go to voicemail, deleted their messages without even listening. What do they expect me to say? Oh, yeah, no big deal, my wife screwing my best friend? But hey, let's all move on. Not a chance. Sarah, for her part, was desperate, I mean desperate. She tried calling me dozens of times, left voicemails full of tears and apologies, and God knows what else. I never listened to a single one. Why should I? She betrayed me, shattered everything we'd built, and for what? For a cheap thrill with a guy I considered a brother. No, she didn't get to cry her way out of this one. I blocked her number, blocked her on every social media platform I could think of. She was a ghost to me, and I wanted to keep it that way. Harry didn't fear any better. He tried reaching out to Emily, trying to spin some sob story about how he never meant for things to go this far. He claimed it was a mistake and that he still loved her. It was pathetic, and Emily, bless her, wasn't going to listen to any of it. She was done with the lies and the betrayal. She had made up her mind to divorce him, and nothing he said would change that. I could see it in her eyes. She had a calm, strong determination that I had come to admire over the past few weeks. She was strong, stronger than I had ever realized. Then came the divorce. If you've never been through it, let me tell you, divorce feels like a slow-motion train wreck. You know it's coming, and you know it's going to be messy, but there's no way to stop it. The lawyers, the paperwork, the endless back and forth over assets, it's like peeling off a bandage only to find there's a festering wound underneath. Every conversation with Sarah turned into a shouting match, every meeting felt like a battle. She had the nerve to play the victim half the time, acting like I was being cruel for not giving her a chance to explain. But what was there to explain? I'd seen the videos, I'd seen everything I needed to see. She was a liar, and there was no way I was going to let her manipulate me anymore. Emily and I supported each other through the whole mess. We'd meet up after our respective legal battles, share a drink, and vent our frustrations. Every time she'd talk about Harry, about the way he tried to cling to her like some desperate drowning man, it made me realize just how toxic this whole situation had become. Harry was grappling, trying to salvage whatever scraps of dignity he had left, but Emily stood firm. She was clear-cut, businesslike about it, and it made me proud to see her take control of her life like that. But don't get me wrong, it wasn't easy. There were days when it all felt like too much, when the weight of it all came crashing down on me like a tidal wave. Days when I'd think back on all the good memories Sarah and I had shared, the laughs, the love, the family we'd built together, and it would break my heart all over again. I'd wonder what went wrong, why she chose to destroy everything we had, and why I hadn't seen it coming. I'd sit in that empty house, surrounded by memories of our marriage, and wonder how I ended up here. An illegal process, it felt like tearing apart the pages of a book I had spent my whole life writing. The lawyers tried to keep things civil, but there's no such thing as a civil divorce when cheating is involved. Everything turned into a fight: who gets the house, who got the car, how we split the savings, the debt, the furniture, you name it. And every argument felt like a new wound, a fresh reminder of how far we'd fallen. Sarah would look at me with those teary eyes, and I knew she was trying to play on my emotions, trying to worm her way back in. But there was no going back, not now, not ever. In the end, we finally managed to hash out the terms of the divorce. We divided the assets as fairly as we could, sold the house, split the proceeds, and moved on with our separate lives. The day I signed those papers, the day I officially ended my marriage, I felt this strange mix of relief and emptiness. It was like cutting off a limb that had gone rotten, painful but necessary. The woman I'd once called my soulmate was now just another name on a piece of paper. A chapter was finally ready to close. Emily's divorce with Harry was just as messy. He tried to fight her on every little thing, tried to drag out the process as long as possible, but she never wavered. I admired that about her. She'd been through hell, and yet she came out on the other side stronger than ever. And when it was all over, when the dust finally settled, we found ourselves standing side by side, two people who'd lost everything but still had each other. I guess there was a certain sense of satisfaction in knowing that we made it through, that we'd weathered the storm and come out the other side. As much as I hated what Sarah had done to me and wished I could go back and change the past, I knew I was better off without her. I was free from the lies, the deception, and the constant worry about what else she was hiding. For the first time in a long time, I felt free from a toxic marriage and the betrayal that had poisoned my life. Even though I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, and there were still scars that would take years to heal, I was ready to move forward. Sometimes, letting go is the only way to set yourself free. It's amazing to think about how much has changed after everything blew up, the divorces, the anger, and all those chaotic nights. Emily and I somehow stayed by each other's side. At first, we didn't know what to call our relationship. Were we just two people trying to heal our wounds together, or was there something deeper? We played it safe, slow dates, cautious conversations, like we were testing the waters without diving in too fast. But there was no denying it. As we spent more time together, our connection grew into something real. We'd sit for hours talking about everything we'd been through, and it felt different. It wasn't just about what we'd lost, it was about what we could build together. Of course, there were moments when the ghosts of our past came back to haunt us. I'd wake up in the middle of the night thinking about Sarah, wondering if I'd ever fully escape the pain of her betrayal. But then, I'd look at Emily, her laugh, her way of just being there, and it felt like maybe, just maybe, I could let go of the past. She made it easy to breathe again, to start trusting without constantly looking over my shoulder. Eventually, I left behind the house Sarah and I had shared for years, a clean break into a new apartment. Emily came over one night, carrying a bottle of red wine, and we sat on the floor of my empty living room. We talked, laughed, cried a little, and I remember thinking, this is what a new beginning feels like. It's messy and a little scary, but it's also freeing in the end. What we had was a chance to build something real, something based on honesty and love, not lies and secrets. Emily and I aren't rushing into anything, we're taking it one day at a time. Maybe one day we will leave all the drama behind for good and find a quiet place to start fresh, away from all the noise. It's not a fairy tale, but it's ours. Looking back, I never would have thought that such a mess would lead me to this point. But now, standing here with the worst behind me and Emily by my side, I know one thing for sure, sometimes, the darkest moments can lead to something much better, and I'm finally ready to see where this all goes. Second story, we met in school, we clicked right away, he was 20, and I was 19, and we both attended the same community college. We started as friends, but we both felt a strong connection eventually. We began dating, and at first, everything was great. We were committed to each other, and while we had some typical arguments, we worked through them together. It felt like a dream, but soon it turned into my worst nightmare. After about a year together, he started getting angry with me for no clear reason. I was confused until I found out he had been talking to 3 other girls for the past 2 months. He was sending messages and gifts, like flowers and chocolates. When I discovered this, I was heartbroken. I confronted him, and he tried to argue that it wasn't cheating since he hadn't met any of them in person. After thinking it over and arguing a lot, I decided to break up with him. He was very angry, but I was sure about my choice. Now, a few months have passed, and I've been regretting my decision. I know what he did was wrong, but I miss him a lot. I miss how he treated me at first, and I'm not sure if I'll find someone like that again. Should I consider going back to him?